On a quiet Colorado prairie 16 miles northwest of Denver, elk graze beside hiking trails, and warning signs tell visitors they might be walking over plutonium. At the center of this public wildlife refuge sits a fenced 1,300-acre zone that no hiker, no biker, no park ranger is allowed to enter. Nothing visible remains there anymore. No building, no smokestack, no rusted fence line, just grass. But the government spent $7 billion trying to erase what once stood on that grass, and 7 school districts still refuse to let children near it. Nobody in charge will fully explain why. Rewind to March 23, 1951. The Atomic Energy Commission announces, almost casually, that it is building a nuclear weapons plant on flat ranch land between Golden and Boulder. The Denver Post runs it beside a Korean War headline about fleeing Chinese troops. Nobody in the newsroom seems to grasp what they've just printed. Dow Chemical wins the contract, not to make soap or plastics, to run the most classified factory in Colorado, like a business, except this business made the plutonium pit at the core of an American nuclear warhead. The land was chosen for exactly what made it forgettable: flat, dry, wind-swept, close enough to Denver for a workforce, far enough to disappear behind a fence. Inside the new buildings, workers reach into sealed metal and glass stations called glove boxes, hands inside thick rubber gloves, plutonium metal on the other side of the glass. It looks almost gentle. It is not. Over the next 37 years, that glove box work will produce 70,000 plutonium triggers, the fissile heart of nearly every warhead in the American arsenal. The plant grows fast and grows secretive faster. Workers sign agreements not to describe their jobs, not even to their own families over dinner. Wives learn to stop asking. Kids learn the plant is where Dad works. Full stop. Then, on September 11, 1957, something goes wrong inside the glove boxes. Plutonium ignites, fire tears through the ductwork, and contaminated smoke pours out into the Colorado sky. The public is never told. Not that week, not that year. It will take University of Colorado scientists years to measure what actually happened, and when they finally do, the numbers are almost impossible to believe. The plutonium fallout near Rocky Flats, they find, was heavier than what researchers recorded near Nagasaki after the atomic bomb. A weapons plant built to defend the country from a nuclear enemy has just quietly dusted its own neighbors with the very material it was designed to control. Nobody outside a small circle knows it yet. The fence holds. The secret holds. For now, the machine just keeps running, bigger, busier, and more essential to Washington than almost anyone driving past its checkpoint could imagine. By the 1970s, Rocky Flats is not just a plant. It's a small, hidden city with its own gravity. Close to 5,000 workers pass through its gates before sunrise, lunch pails in hand, badges checked by guards who carry submachine guns. Vaults with foot-thick walls hold plutonium metal behind blast doors. Anti-aircraft positions ring a compound most of Denver still cannot officially confirm exists. Inside the fence, this is one of the largest employers in the entire metro area. Outside the fence, it's a rumor with a paycheck attached. Building 771 sites at the center of it, 3 football fields of plutonium processing, later described flatly by the Denver Post as the most dangerous building in America. Workers who spent decades inside it don't remember it that way. They remember leaks. Jim Kelly, who logged 23 years in 771, later called it a hellhole to work in. He said coworkers once dropped a full drum of radioactive waste down his back while heaving it toward the incinerator. He said the pipes, valves, and glove boxes leaked constantly enough that patched tape covered the building like 5 million Band-Aids. Inside the plant, there's even a private vocabulary for it. Contamination is crap. Getting sprayed with it is getting crapped up. absorbing so much radiation that you're pulled out of the plutonium areas entirely and reassigned to a desk is getting crapped out. It is workplace slang for exposure to one of the most dangerous substances on Earth, spoken as casually as complaints about overtime. Outside the plant, life looks almost ordinary. Families in Arvada and the West Denver suburbs depend on Rocky Flats paychecks for groceries, mortgages, and Friday nights out. The plant pours billions into the local economy across 4 decades. Nobody questions the mission. The Cold War says the mission is necessary, and the mission pays well. But cracks are already spreading. On May 11, 1969, plutonium stored in glove boxes ignites again, a fire so severe it becomes, at the time, the most expensive industrial accident in American history, and one investigators later admit came close to contaminating the entire Denver region. It barely makes the evening news. Carl Johnson, director of Jefferson County's health department, starts publishing something the plant can't control. Data. He finds cancer rates climbing near Rocky Flats. He finds land marked for 10,000 new homes contaminated with plutonium at 7 times the state's own safety standard. Federal housing officials quietly warn realtors to disclose the risk to buyers. Johnson is fired in 1981. The warnings to home buyers get quietly withdrawn soon after. The plant keeps running. Inside, waste crews are mixing radioactive sludge from open-air solar ponds with Portland cement, pouring it into cardboard boxes meant to harden into something called pondcrete. Often, it doesn't harden. It leaks. An engineer named Jim Stone, laid off in 1986, walks away with a Department of Energy memo calling the plant's waste facilities patently illegal. His case will eventually reach the U.S. Supreme Court. For now, it reaches someone else first, someone with a badge, watching Building 771 from the sky. By December 1988, FBI agent John Lipsky is flying light aircraft over Rocky Flats at night, infrared cameras rolling, recording the unpermitted incinerator inside Building 771, running long after it's supposed to be shut down. On June 6, 1989, more than 70 armed FBI agents in 30 vehicles arrive at the plant. They tell Rockwell officials they're there to brief them on an eco-terrorist threat. It's a cover story. Once the room is full, agents reveal the real reason: Operation Desert Glow. It is the first time in American history one federal agency raids another. Rockwell's site manager, Dominic Sanchini, sits stunned in that meeting. He'll be dead of cancer within the year. The raid uncovers what the fence had hidden for decades: more than 2,600 pounds of plutonium and radioactive material unaccounted for across 40 years of operation. A special grand jury hears testimony from 110 witnesses and reviews 2,000 exhibits, and concludes that Rockwell, its successor EG&G, and the Department of Energy ran what the jury calls an ongoing criminal enterprise, one that continued even after the raid. The jury recommends criminal indictments. None are ever issued. Instead, Rockwell pleads guilty in 1992 to 10 environmental crimes and pays $18.5 million, at the time the largest environmental fine in American history, and still less than what the company had collected in government bonuses for running the plant. Grand jury foreman Wes McKinley later calls it a betrayal in a book he titles, without irony, The Ambushed Grand Jury. Production never resumes. 5 months after the raid, the same month the Berlin Wall falls, plutonium operations at Rocky Flats stop for good. The mission that had justified everything, the secrecy, the fence, the risk, simply evaporates. What follows is not a quick death. Cleanup crews spend a decade dismantling what an earlier generation of workers spent decades building. 8,000 to 12,000 people tear down roughly 800 buildings. Building 771 itself stands sealed and empty for 25 years before it is finally demolished in 2004. Kaiser Hill's president Nancy Tuor calls it good riddance to the most dangerous building in America. The Department of Energy had once projected the cleanup would take 70 years and cost $36.6 billion. It is finished in about a decade for roughly $7 billion. In 2007, most of the site reopens as the Rocky Flats National Wildlife Refuge. Elk return, prairie grass returns. Trails open to the public in 2018 over the objections of lawsuits that are never fully resolved. Homeowners near the old plant eventually win a $375 million settlement after a 26-year legal fight. And at the center of all of it, that 1,300-acre core, the ground where Building 771 and the glove boxes and the incinerator once stood, stays fenced off, monitored, and permanently closed to the public. Warning signs still go up at trailheads today. 7 school districts still won't send children there. And John Lipsky, the same agent who led agents through that door in 1989, still tells people exactly what he told them then. Use Rocky Flats at your own risk. The elk don't know what the fence means. The hikers mostly don't either. But the fence is still there, holding its shape around a wound the government spent $7 billion trying to close and never quite did.